Money doesn't just come from one place. It drips, trickles, flows, and floods into our lives in different ways. Welcome to Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood, a podcast that explores the power of multiple income streams. And we're so excited today because we have an awesome, awesome guest with us. We have Quinn Tempest. She's a business strategist and founder of the Create Your Purpose Collective, a community for women solopreneurs building intentional, sustainable businesses that actually work for their lives. And over the past 8 years, she's evolved from a 100% services model to a purposely diversified business that includes a community-driven membership, one-on-one strategy intensives, ongoing coaching, and thought leadership. And all of this is aligned with her values, energy, and season of life, which is toddler chasing season, which she just brought up as well. So welcome, Quinn. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you. I am so excited to speak in full sentences today because for the last 3 days, I've been potty training my toddler and we actually kept her home one extra day. So if I somehow become monosyllabic, that's why.
We're fine with that.
Great. We'll keep it really simple then.
Totally fine. We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Quinn. I'm excited to learn more about what you've been up to. You and I are speaking for basically the first time here.
Yeah. And I know Melissa from many years ago, and I've always been just admiring your work. So it's fun to talk about money because it's something that I'm obsessed with lately and learning about and thinking about. So I'm happy to take this wherever you want to go.
Okay. We have a lot to dig into with you, and I'm very excited about your obsession with money. So when we first talked about having you on, you mentioned that you think of your income evolution as a drip, trickle, flow, flood journey. So why don't we kind of start at the beginning of that? So where did that story begin?
Gosh, going way back, I started my business unofficially in 2011. So I had burned out completely from my job. I lived in LA. I was in the entertainment catering industry, although I went to school for acting and ended up not doing that. So I burnt out. I even landed in the hospital. 10 out of 10 don't recommend. And so in 2011, it was my year of both physical recovery and asking myself, why did this happen? What do I actually want to do in my career? And how can I do it in a way that really honors my health and my sense of purpose? But I felt like I was floating at the time and I didn't really know. So my whole business kind of started off as just a drip. And it was a little bit of an unintentional drip. Like I didn't necessarily have this huge vision for a business or whatever. I just wanted to take care of myself. And I happened to have some marketable skills. I happened to meet some people in a coffee shop. They happened to hire me. It kind of just happened. And things switched after about a year where I thought to myself, I really enjoy this. I like working with people. At the time, I was doing a lot of graphic design, marketing, consulting, things like that. And I think that's really where the switch turned, where I actually decided to turn those drips into trickles. And from there, basically from 2012 until 2017, my business was 100% service-based. So I was consulting, I was designing logos, designing websites, doing marketing strategy. And during that time also, which I find really important, especially at the beginning stages of business, because I work with a lot of women who are in their first 5 years, I did take on a retainer client. And that was really great. I know, Melissa, you've done this as well, because I just needed that sustainable foundation underneath me, because otherwise it's so easy to fall into making decisions in your business from a place of fear and overwhelm. So basically I had that as my flow. And then I was able to start building out the trickles with the projects that I really wanted to do. And so I looked at my business in that way is where's that financial foundation that just gives me that calm and sense of peace? And then how can I build in my passion and my purpose, which don't necessarily always equate to financial rewards, although eventually I felt like that was where I was going. But that first 5 years was really just like that foundation building with one flow and quite a few trickles. So that's where I started. And then obviously it started to change as I evolved my business model, which I'm happy to share about. But if anything came up from that, I think that's the basis of the story is how the business started.
So those trickles, have you kept them all going? Have some come and gone? Have some of them evolved into, flows?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I ended up doing a heat map of my revenue over the years, starting in 2017. I know that sounds really nerdy and it absolutely is, but it really helped me visualize when I made the decision to start diversifying. Because in 2017, I got married and I had it on my mind. I wanted to start a family. And I looked at my revenue, and I think it was like 47% came from one client, that retainer client. And the rest was from just like lots of different trickles. And so I looked at that and thought, either I need to go full time with this client or I need to go all in on building the other half and making that more of a flood. And so the other half was like working with a lot of women, working with them to design their brands from the ground up, to develop marketing strategies. And that was really where I felt lit up. But I also had this great retainer client where I was director of marketing for this agency. I was traveling all over the country. I was teaching. It was really fun and exciting, but like my heart wasn't in it. And so there was this distinct decision when I frankly got off the plane from my honeymoon. I was like, I don't want to work with this client anymore. And so it was another pivot point in my journey. The first one was when I was like, I'm going to make my business intentional. The second one was, I want to set up my business so that I can have a family and not feel like I'm letting go of my passion or my financial foundation. So basically from 2017, I didn't have my daughter till 2022, and COVID happened all between this. But basically from 2017 to around 2020, that was when I went all in on my own business, on taking those little trickles, turning them more into a flood. And frankly, like taking on more than I would now, just to be able to reinvest it back into the business. How to answer your question, absolutely. Like it evolved. And so basically from 2017, it was 100% service based. By 2019, actually, let me pull it up because I have this open. In 2019, I was able to take that 100% down to 66% of service based. And that's when I founded and started my membership community, which is called The Collective. And in 2019, I had 18% of revenue. So it's interesting to see my heat map because it was like real hot in consulting in 2017. And then it took 2 years to just build one more income stream. And then after that, it was like one more, and it took some time. And now in 2025, I have pretty much 4 flood type income streams, but it's absolutely been a journey. I'll tell you.
That's awesome. I love how you've done
made-
this. Go ahead, Denny.
Oh, you made the comment, it just happened, and then you randomly met people in the coffee shop.
Yeah.
I guess I live by the idea that you never know where something's gonna go, a conversation, a meeting. And so like sometimes you sit there and you talk to people or you go up to out to coffee or whatever, and seemingly it could look like maybe it wasn't the best use of time. You just never know where those things lead in the future. So I guess I want you to elaborate a little bit on how it just happened.
Yeah. It's funny because it all came full circle. I met my first client in a coffee shop. And then many years later, I met my husband in a coffee shop. So I am absolutely, it was very meet cute rom-com of it all. But yeah, I think it's just being open. And it's not just like you're a paper bag floating in the wind, like Katy Perry style. It's like you go and you put action to something that you're interested in, and you see how kind of the world responds, and you feel it out. And well, is this the right fit? Do I want to move forward with this? And you're always being that introspective person who's checking in on yourself. Like, okay, the world gave me this. What do I want to do with it? So I think that was like the biggest thing was I just had a lot of energy and momentum, and I had a skill set. I didn't necessarily know where it was going to go, but I was curious enough to find out. And I think that was like the spirit that started my business. And it's frankly been the spirit that has sustained it because I've had multiple shifts in my business model over the years. I just outlined a few of them. And frankly, even in the past couple of years since I had my daughter, I've had to shift things again. And there's always that period where you're just not sure of your footing of like, where am I? What am I doing? How do I want to do this? But think it's the more that you can ask that question, the more you can take action and put things out there, see where you get the momentum and see where you don't get the momentum, and then adjust based on that. Does that at all answer your question? Like I got metaphysical.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's good that there is just, and I see that a lot with, and I kind of came up with this idea of the drip, trickle, flows, and floods is those drips and trickles give you the opportunity to see where things go. Like when you're trying something new, it's kind of like in college where you go, okay, I'm going to take this class and just see. It's that kind of mindset where you can just try. If you bump into somebody at a coffee shop, see if you like them. Next thing you know, you marry them. That's it's a
It
pretty
happened to
brave
me.
way to go through the world, I think.
Yeah, I think it fits to my vision and a belief about creativity. And I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert in one of my favorite books called Big Magic, which is all about creativity. Like follow your curiosity and take action based on what you're curious about. It's not necessarily that you have to be 100% passionate and like lit up, but like, if you're curious about something, read about it. Like right now, I'm obsessed with money. I'm reading about it all the time. We're having this conversation right now, and even in my business, like 3 years ago, I had never really done more of that coaching model. And I always come from that from a strategic standpoint. So I say I'm providing strategic business and marketing support with coaching integrated. And in 2020, I believe, I made 0% from that. But then I experimented with it in say 2021, 2022. It was 3% of my revenue. I did a little bit more in 2023, 6% of my revenue. And then 2024, it was 16% of my revenue. And this year, I always like to set goals. It's like maybe 20, 22% of my revenue. But even if we take away the numbers, it was an experiment is how can I support women, especially my clientele, in a different, unique way that maps to the season that I'm in my business and life, as well as the evolution of my own expertise. Because I had done consulting, I had done project based stuff. It was fine and all, but I really like to see an individual make changes that results in things that they're so excited about. So that started off as a little curiosity 4 years ago, a little experiment, and now it's almost a fifth of my revenue. So it's like that the drip, I think, should be driven by your curiosity. And if you're an entrepreneur, you get to play around with how that comes to life. And then you also get to decide, do I want to turn this into a trickle? Do I want to turn this into a flow? And I'm at this point where I like to have multiple flows because I'm a mother and I need a little bit more freedom as well as a strong financial foundation.
This feels like SpawnCon for coffee shops. So everyone gets to your local coffee shop immediately. You can build a business and find a husband, find a spouse. I think that's hilarious. And I feel like that's a whole episode in and of itself. One thing that was coming up for me, Quinn, is you've made a lot of pivots and big moves in your business. You've fired your biggest client. You've gone here and there. You've reimagined, reinvented, turned drips and trickles into flows. And that is not something that is easy for everyone. I know that is something you work with entrepreneurs on. So can you share a little bit with us around that? Number one, how do you have the courage to do that? And then number two, like what would you impart to other people? Because there's a lot of fear that simmers in that space. And so what would you share to others who are like a little scared of the pivot?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's interesting because looking back, sometimes I frankly don't even know how I had the courage to do it. And I think that's been a really interesting place to be as now I don't even know how old I am, 38. I have a child. I'm in this new season of life and I'm looking back and wondering, how did I have the confidence to do that? And the only thing I can think of is I really wanted to feel aligned with my work. And anytime I felt what I think of as signals like dread, procrastination, just like overall over it feeling, to me, we often think of burnout as a failure, but I prefer to look at burnout as a signal and almost a sign to pay attention to that it's time for something to change. And at least in my worldview, since I'm an entrepreneur, usually that means where I'm spending my time and my energy. and how it needs to be realigned to the seasonality of my life or the seasonality of my business and like where my energy is. And so I think that there's just been a drive in me that I don't want to phone it in. Like I don't want to feel disconnected from my work. Frankly, if I wanted to do that, I would go get a job. But I know I would be so bad at it. Like I'm at this point where I feel unemployable, not necessarily from a skill set perspective, from like just a like capacity and energy and like excitement perspective. But I think really that is what gave me courage was I just want to feel lit up by my work. And when I say that, I don't mean all of the time, because I think that's a misconception I come across a lot with my clients who want to be more purposeful in their work. They think they need to be like this shiny, happy unicorn, like frolicking through the field with like sparkles all around them every single day. And to me, it's not about all of the time. It's about feeling more purposeful and aligned more of the time. And so I always find that when I'm in that place where it just feels like a drag to work, that's a signal that it's time to make a shift. And I will say, though, I'll be honest, like there's been a couple of points in this recent stage of my life since my daughter's was born where I was like, do I have the energy to do this again? Do I have the interest and capacity to? And I don't have a specific answer because I keep going back and forth on it. But then I get to have conversations like this and hear other people doing it, and I come back to life. So I'm definitely not perfect, but I think for me, it's always just been the courage and the confidence came from the desire to feel aligned in my work and like I'm doing something meaningful, which is something, frankly, we all need to find in our work in some way or form.
Yeah.
You mentioned burnout and failure, or it
Mhm.
can be seen as failure. It's interesting. I often see, and I've experienced this, that the burnout is because of success. Like at
Mhm.
some point, sometimes you start something or you're in something at a certain level, and its own success is what creates the burnout. And sometimes it's not failure. It's all right, you had a lot of success and we only have so many cognitive resources, we only have so much energy. And that's I think often that's what creates the burnout. Obviously, having failure can create that feeling
Yeah.
too, but I've seen a lot of that success is what can cause the burnout because you can't always keep up with it or maintain it.
Absolutely. I think that's like the flip side of it. I will tell you though that I work with a lot of women, almost all women, and I would say they don't necessarily internalize burnout as success. It's probably just how we are wired and socialized as women is that we are a failure if we have. And so part of what I do is to frame it in that way is actually you've gotten to, and I hate the word up leveling because it just reminds MLM babes, but it is that kind of idea, right? Like where you get to the next level and you are successful in doing that. But basically, what got you here will not get you there. Wherever there is where you want to go next. And so often I look at burnout as you were working in a system of whatever it is, processes, energy, productivity that got you to this point, and now it's no longer serving you to get to the next point. And so what do you need to change? And that's a lot of what I do in my actual business is with my clients in their businesses. How do you need to change like how you approach your client work? How do you need to add friction? All those things. But I think if you like expand the conversation of burnout, yeah, it's you've reached a level of success and what got you here is not going to get you there. And you also need to start to reframe it as not a failure or not a bottoming out, but a chance to grow. And that I think for women especially is very hard because we are socialized to be very critical of ourselves. And that's something that I really want to change as much as I can.
Yeah, that is a good point. And the self-sabotage, I'm sure you experience with your clients too, because I do as well,
Yes.
which is often gendered in a way where we hit that level of success and then we start doing things to self-sabotage and make sure that success does not stick around. And I'm raising my hand because I'm one that has done that in the past.
Same.
Fun times. You also mentioned something about your during maternity leave. there was like another shift in your business. So again, like we're pivoting, we're shifting a lot. And you mentioned to me, not here, but when we talked before about you broke and rebuilt your business. So I'm just curious from that, because I know a lot of women particularly go through this. What parts then of your identity or your business model didn't survive in that? And then what came back stronger?
Yeah. It's so hard to even like talk about it because it's like it was such a roller coaster. And I think a lot of this had started before I was even pregnant and then it continued after. But I think, yes, it changed my business in a way, but I think it also changed how I related to my business. And that was even more of an impact. Where before, frankly, my business was my baby. I'm sure you both know that.
Yeah.
Like, that was my baby. Like, you put so much time into it. You stay up late at night, you nurture it, you do all the things. And I think the other thing is like, it's always in the back of your brain. You're thinking about it all the time. You're doing a lot of this mental, emotional energy to manage it. And I think that's going back to what we talked about before. Like, where did the confidence come from to make those pivots? Is like, I had a lot of space to think about it. And I think that was the hardest thing, was realizing, especially in those first 6 months when my daughter was born, like, there was almost no capacity to hold my business in my head anymore in the same way that I did before. And so that necessitated different decisions, frankly, within the business model. So even one thing that I did, which I frankly, I thought I would never need to do again, was take a retainer client. I thought I was past that point. I was like, oh, I'm now an entrepreneur. I have my own business. I don't work for other clients. And I wore that as a badge of honor probably for 5 years, where I didn't have any retainer clients. I didn't have a flood in that sense of it from one client. But it made sense in this phase of my life. And I think coming to terms with that was a little hard. Also, coming to terms with the fact that certain revenue streams weren't doing as well as they used to, or weren't doing as well as I wanted them to be by that certain point in history, was also really hard. So I think it just came down to, this isn't necessarily what I thought it would be. How can I be okay with that? And how can I relate to my business differently in this season of life and make different decisions? So that was like why it felt like it all broke down and why I had to make different decisions. And I'm still in it, frankly, Melissa. So I'm still figuring it out. But I think it was like those major things. Also, I will say, with the timing, and I'm sure this has probably come up on your podcast before, but in the online business space, especially in my niche, 2020 was actually great.
Yeah.
2020, 2021. I'm sure you've talked about like the market and all of this, but I didn't necessarily see it at the time as a market thing. I just thought I was freaking fabulous. And I was like, I'm just doing all the people love me. I'm making money. And I didn't know that I had entered the market with a product at the right moment in time. So there was a lot of unpacking of that later when the thing that I built was making a lot less than it was when it first came out. And I had to change how I did things. So it was a lot of more just like the mental, emotional part that felt like it was broken. And so it was like I had to relate to my business differently. And it's still a work in progress. Does that even make sense?
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's hilarious. You know, I'm in the construction world, and
Oh, yeah.
there for the last, I don't know, decade, everybody, they think they are really good at running a construction company.
Yeah.
I can tell you before that, there was a period of time where nobody thought they were good at running a construction company. And it is interesting, just that timing piece of, okay, what's going on in the world? And there's a lot of it's better to be lucky than good. There's also a lot of it's better to be naive and you don't know what you don't know and you don't know what to be scared of. It allows you to take more
Yes.
risks and kind of be more aggressive sometimes. And all of those things have to come together. And it's such a ever changing thing. And just because you've been through different cycles doesn't necessarily mean that the next cycle is going to be similar to the previous one. And I think that's why what you have created here and just the approach that you have so many different pieces to it and you pursue different avenues and you're kind of always fostering different pieces and that you're tracking it. The fact that you know your numbers so well and are paying attention to those means that you can see them change so that you can, have your business evolve as necessary. I think that's a really good lesson for people that, you know, one, things aren't going to always go as planned. And two, if you design your business in a way that can be adaptable, it allows you to weather these different periods of life, whether it's an economic piece that you can't control, whether it's a worldwide pandemic, or whether it's having a kid. We had a hair salon when our daughter was born. And so my wife took some time off and then she came back a little bit. And it was pretty clear her heart was not in it anymore. We had spent a lot of time there and it was super fun. And next thing, now I'm running a salon, which I
Yeah.
frankly had no business doing. And, and so we just talked about it and we made the decision, and we ended up selling it to our manager who had been carrying more than her fair share for the year that Lindsay was
Yeah.
focused on our daughter. So I think it's cool
I
that you've seen those pieces and you're in a business where you can share those with other people.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you reflecting that back to me. It's often nice to hear. And I think it brought up for me what I see in both myself and my clients who I help through these, because knowing my numbers and all that, that's something a lot of my clients struggle. I am working with a client right now who had no visibility on her numbers, but all of her stress was coming from that. So that's what we worked on. But I think like the common thread through all of this is in your decision making in your business, in your life, it's less important the actual decisions you make and the results that come from them, and more important, the intentionality behind the decisions. And I think that is a weird concept for a lot of people to grasp, but I think it's the thing that we need in our culture and society is that sense of intentionality and purpose in making decisions with the best information we have possible for ourselves from a place of calm and or maybe not even calm, but from a place of purpose versus what I see as the common issue is decision making that comes from a place of fear and overwhelm and unawareness. And so that's a big thing that I'm focused on, both for myself and for my clients. And it happens to come to life within the entrepreneurial realm, but I see it all the time with parents and with friends and just making decisions that add to your plate and add to your overwhelm. And I'm not saying that we all have the privilege of making those types of intentional decisions, but it's at least my purpose to help more people be able to access the skills and the ways of thinking in order to do
I am guilty of the ad.
that. We all are.
I rarely take things away.
Yeah. And that's the hardest thing, right? You got to let go in order to grow sometimes, but your ego
That's a great quote.
it sure doesn't want it. That was when I was reflecting on my heat map. I was like, there was so much ego in some of these decisions. And it's so funny to reflect back on it.
I think that is a great check mark to do it as people are doing their own drip, trickle, flows, and floods is the ego death as you go along. And you brought up a really specific example of it, Quinn, where there was a season of your life where you did not want to have retainer clients and chose to do other types of work. And then there was a season where the retainer client made sense again. And I completely understand that too, because oftentimes that takes up less brain space. So that makes complete sense. And I have done that myself. But there is this like pervasive belief in the entrepreneurial space that it's like you go back to that and you're not doing this like coaching or selling online courses or whatever the hot thing of the moment is, then it's like you're not real. you're not really a business owner. And it's just so silly. All of that is so silly.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of aligning those business decisions and aligning how you outline your revenue streams with your season of life, with what is the purpose behind this? And is that coming from a place of ego? Or is it coming from a place of values or however you would frame it? But I think that's such a great thing to layer over when people are sitting down and figuring out how they want to arc out all of their drip, trickles, flows, and floods.
Absolutely. And I think that it's a real sign of resilience when you can do something like that. I'm working with my clients on that right now where they had a lot of resistance to specific business models or offerings in the past. but it was 6 years ago and they're a different person now. And so often well, how can you revisit this type of offer, but as who you are now? And so I'll tell you, my retainer right now looks completely different than the retainer I had 6 years ago for 5 years. And I'm getting paid more. It's less intensive. It's a way more boundaries around it. And so you can redefine things based on who you are now. And like you said, the season of life and feel like you actually have grown. You're not going back. I don't feel like I regressed in any way. And like you said, it's given me the brain space that I frankly need after a 3-day weekend of potty training.
You say retainer, so you're working as like a 1099 for some entity or person?
Yeah. So, like, even compared to last year, I probably had 4 or 5 different clients that I worked with on a project base. But the energy I needed to get those clients was not something I could do this year again. And so I had a really great relationship with one of them. So at the end of last year, I proposed, hey, how about we make this a little bit more official for the full year? Let's do a contract, an agreement. Here's the scope. They loved it. And it's been great. We're 7 months in now. And yeah, so it's now I just basically have that one. And of course, there's risks inherent in that, right? Like I've turned off the marketing system for that, but it also maps to where I want to go anyway. It's what I needed. So now I'm basically doing marketing, consulting, and strategic messaging for one client versus quite a few. And they're paying better too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have to say, Quinn, during this conversation, I always take notes for questions I'm going to be asking. I find myself taking notes of stuff that I'm going to take into my own life as I'm talking to you. So very, very good stuff. I hope that our listeners are doing the same, and maybe they'll even, restart this episode again with a pen in hand and write down some of these nuggets here.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Let it go in order to grow is, I think, a huge one.
Yeah, it's not talked about enough. And I feel like I have this conversation a lot with my clients because they're at that point where they built something solid. But in order to literally scale, they have to let go of certain ways of thinking, certain offers, certain ways of processing. But I do think like this expands to other things in life. There's certain things you just have to let go of in order to up level, as the honeys call it, or grow in some way. So let go in order to grow.
We need a new term for up level.
I know.
I guess it's just grow, but
yeah.
Maybe there's like a fun term to go along with that.
Or like Mario when he like steps on he goes through the tunnel, like whatever that. Oh, power up. You're going to power up.
Oh, I like that.
As soon as Melissa, you just said we need another term, Mario instantly popped in my head. I was thinking like the tubes.
Yeah.
Some of them you go down, but some of them you can jump actually up.
Yeah. I literally wrote an email called How to Power Up Like Mario.
Oh my gosh. There we go. Now we have our new term. And that alone could be like a whole revenue stream.
How to power up. Yeah. Like how to power up with purpose or on purpose.
Yes. Now we need to have a resurgence of that. We'll need to link to, if that's public, that email that you wrote. Okay, we'll have to link to that so that everybody can see that.
Yeah, and I can send you my literal heat map for my revenue because it's a little mental, so you can like actually see it. Not that anyone has to follow it in that way, but I think you can see like the thought process behind it in numbers.
Well, that would be very helpful for a lot of people because as you mentioned earlier, sometimes people put blinders on around the numbers and feel very disconnected from it. So obviously that's one thing we're trying to do here. But I love that you have a system, especially for entrepreneurs, where they can do that and pay more attention to their numbers. We're coming up on our time. So I have one more question I know I want to ask, which is, I'm curious how you define success these days, which I feel for you is probably much different than even like when I first met you 10 years ago.
I know oh gosh, that was so different. Yeah. So I feel like I definitely have more intangibles now to help define success. But I think my biggest one is just, and I don't want to say time freedom because that's boring, but like energy freedom. Like I get to direct my energy where I want Like, to me, that is the ultimate form of success. If I want to work out this morning, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to create white space in my day to take time to write. That's like my next goal is like, I got to get back to writing. So it's like the fact that I can allocate my energy and where my focus goes is a huge level of success for me. But I also don't want to disregard like the financial piece. But I think, and this is actually another thing that came out of my maternity leave and what spawned the obsession with money was when I wasn't making as much and I was relying more on my husband. Oh boy, did I not like that. And it brought up so many things for me because I was always very successful in the financial. So at certain points, I made more. And to then be with a baby at home and not be able to do that was really difficult. And I started learning more about like the system and the financial system and how it impacts women differently than men. Sorry, Tony, but it does. So I think it was just like learning that. So I think whereas I used to have big number in mind, now it's what do I need? Not just get by, but thrive at least a little bit, but not tax myself too much. And I'm also open to that changing in the future. So for me, it's like energy, freedom, having that kind of sustained level of finances. And then the fact that I can be a little bit more flexible while my daughter's young is really nice. Like today, she's literally home because we wanted an extra day with potty training. And so thankfully, my husband and I are going to tag team. But if one of us had both of us had normal jobs, like we wouldn't be able to do that. So I'm trying to remember that because I think for so long, my idea of success was fully tangled up with finances and that broke during maternity leave and in a good way. And so I'm kind of in a new stage of defining what that is. But I think those three things are the main thing right now.
I love that. I love that energetic question.
Energy freedom is awesome. I do that a lot, but I never framed it.
Yeah, because it's not about time, right?
Mhm.
Even when I talk to my clients, they say, how much time is this going to take? I was like, honey, it's not just 2 hours of time. That's 4 hours of energy. And so I kind of have to look at like your work in that way. And when it comes to even pricing your work or whatnot. So I think it's like energetic freedom is much harder than time freedom to create.
Agree. Ooh, what a good note to leave us on. Thank you, Quinn. You're
Yeah.
amazing. We'll have to have you back because I feel like we could ask you 8 million more
Oh my
questions.
gosh, we could keep talking for a long time. Yeah, like the systemic stuff. I love how you guys were like trashing James Ramsey the other day. I loved it. Yeah, that guy's gotta go.
Thank you so much, Quinn. We so appreciated having you on. We'll put lots of links in our show notes so everyone can find Quinn and her amazing work. And if you like this episode, please rate and review on your favorite podcast platform. And until next time, we'll see you on Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood. Thanks, everybody.